Today, we're digging into a really powerful argument that modern capitalism, the whole system, is built on a foundational theft, and it all comes down to the ground right under our feet. Honestly, understanding this one idea, it might just change how you see everything. This quote gets right to the heart of it. We live in this world of abstract finance, stocks, bonds, digital currencies, but this one simple sentence just cuts through on the noise. It reminds us that none of it means anything without the real material world it's all supposed to represent. So, here's the argument. Our modern economy loves to pretend it's weightless, right? Just numbers flying around on a screen. But it's all anchored to the land. Every corporation has a physical office somewhere. Every supply chain has to start with resources pulled out of the earth. The entire system, when you get right down to it, rests on dirt. And this is the crucial point. Before anyone could sell anything, before they could build a factory or trade a stock, they first had to control the land where things actually come from. Land isn't just another thing you can buy or sell. According to our source, it's the precondition for all other things and for life itself. So you gotta ask, how did land, which for most of human history was this shared necessity, become a private asset that you can just buy and sell? Well, the source we're looking at argues this wasn't some kind of natural evolution. It was a deliberate act. This right here, this illustrates a massive shift in how we think. On one side, you've got land as the basis for community life for everyone. And on the other, it's a tool for private profit and for keeping people out. The source argues this exact shift is basically the origin story of modern inequality. Yeah, the text is really clear on this. The very concept of private land ownership started with taking what used to be for everyone. Think about the Enclosure Acts back in England. They were so important because they systematically fenced off common lands, kicking peasants off the land they used to survive on and turning them into a landless workforce. Or, look at the colonial conquest of the Americas, which seized entire continents. This wasn't a business deal, it was a violent transformation. Okay, so if this initial act was a theft, how was it made permanent? How did something so violent become a respectable financial asset? Well, the source points to the creation of a legal fortress built around it. This slide breaks down the whole playbook. It's a three-stage process. First, there's the taking of the land. Then, the fortification. You wrap it up in legal paperwork to make your ownership seem official and permanent. And finally, the leverage. You use that legally defended asset to extract wealth from everybody else who needs it just to survive. These are the walls of the fortress. A deed isn't just a piece of paper saying you own something. It's a legal weapon to exclude other people. And zoning laws? The source points out they've historically been used to enforce racial segregation and hoard land value, just cementing the advantages gained from that original taking. These aren't just boring administrative tools. They are powerful instruments designed to make a temporary power grab permanent. And this is exactly why our legal system calls it real property. It has to be real. It has to be permanent, because banks won't give out mortgages and investors won't build on ground that could just be given back. The whole financial system needs a stable foundation to build on, and that foundation is privatized land. All right, so we've looked at the theory of how land became privatized, but now let's talk about the human cost of a system where the very ground you need to survive is locked behind a paywall. This brings this huge, abstract concept right down to a personal level. Before all the enclosures, a person could get by on the commons. After enclosure, they have no choice but to sell their labor to the person who now owns the land, just to earn enough money to pay for the food and shelter that used to be freely available. From this perspective, eviction isn't just some simple legal procedure for not paying rent. It's seen as the state-sanctioned violence that's required to keep this system going. It is the physical act of removing someone from the place they need to live, all to defend a piece of paper, a title deed. So, if you follow that logic, if eviction is violence, then what is squatting? Occupying an empty, unused space. Well, in this view, it gets reframed as a logical act of survival. It's a direct challenge to the idea that a building should sit empty just to make a profit while a person has to sleep on the street. And this all leads to a really stark conclusion. Homelessness isn't an accident. It's the logical, predictable result of a system where shelter is treated as a commodity for financial speculation. According to this view, it's not a bug in the system, it's a feature. This question, it really forces us to confront the ultimate stakes, doesn't it? If you can't exist without occupying space, and all the space is owned by someone else, what does that actually say about your fundamental right to even exist? So, if the very foundation is this flawed, what's the alternative? What does the source suggest we do? How do you fix a problem that's literally at the base of everything? Well, the text draws a really stark contrast. It argues we need to shift from this model of ownership and extraction to one of stewardship and care. So instead of asking, how much profit can I squeeze out of this piece of land? The question becomes, how can this land best sustain the community? And this isn't just a vague idea. The source outlines some really concrete goals. It means creating policies where housing is a human right, not just an investment. It means supporting community gardens over speculative real estate. Ultimately, it's about fundamentally changing who the land is for. This is the final and maybe most radical turn in the argument. Financial crashes, they come and go, right? But the underlying structure of who owns what, that stays the same. The source suggests that real, systemic change only happens when the control of the ground itself is challenged and transformed. And that's the provocative thought we're left with. It completely reframes the whole debate. It asks us to think about whether reclaiming land for common use is an act of destruction, or if it's actually an act of profound, necessary justice. What do you think?